The obsidian hall of the Vorac Dominion's High Senate hummed with the low-frequency vibrations of 100 different species. Holographic banners flickered in the cavernous space, each displaying the sigil of a conquered civilization. The air smelled of ionized metal and something faintly organic, the pheromonal markers of the ruling Vorac caste. At the center of the chamber, Emperor Vexis rose from his throne of fused bone and dark alloy. His chitinous plates gleamed under the artificial starlight, each segment shifting like liquid armor as he moved. 4 segmented arms unfolded in a gesture of dominance, the claws at their tips clicking together in a sound that silenced the gathered delegates. "Today marks the end of an era," Vexis announced, his voice a deep, reverberating growl that echoed through the chamber. The universal translators embedded in the walls rendered his words into 100 languages. But the contempt needed no translation. The Galactic Concord has tolerated the human infestation long enough. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Some species shifted uncomfortably. Others, those who had already bowed to the Dominion, leaned forward eagerly. On the observation deck overlooking the Senate floor, Captain Kane stood motionless, his hands clenched behind his back. The dim lighting cast sharp shadows across his face, but nothing could hide the tension in his jaw. Around him, the few remaining human envoys stood in silence, their uniforms a stark contrast to the flamboyant robes and exoskeletal adornments of the alien delegates. A holographic display flickered to life above the Senate floor. The image of Earth filled the space, blue and green and achingly vulnerable. Then, fire orbital bombardment rained down, turning cities to ash. The footage was old, taken during the first failed Dominion incursion decades ago. But the message was clear. Laughter echoed through the chamber. A Phyraxian admiral, his carapace polished to a mirror shine, clacked his mandibles together. "Look at them run," he sneered. Like insects before the flame. Kane's fingers dug into his palms. He remembered that day. He'd been a cadet then, watching from Lunar Station as the first Dominion ships broke through the outer defenses. He remembered the panic, the desperation, and then the sudden, brutal counterstrike that had driven the invaders back. But the Concord had seen only the initial attack, not the retaliation. Vexis spread his arms wide. "By unanimous decision of the High Senate, humanity is hereby declared a quarantined species." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "Your worlds will be cleansed, your fleets dismantled. Those who surrender will be permitted to serve the Dominion as laborers." More laughter. A Zephyrian diplomat, her iridescent scales rippling with amusement, flicked her tongue in Kane's direction. "Perhaps they can polish our ships," she mused, "if their hands are steady enough." Kane didn't react. He'd spent enough time among the Concord to know how this worked. The Dominion didn't issue declarations. They staged performances. This was a show, one meant to humiliate, to demoralize, and it was working. Next to him, Lieutenant Chen exhaled sharply. "They're really going to do it," she whispered. "The Concord won't lift a finger." Kane didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the hologram, now replaying the destruction in slow motion. The Dominion had miscalculated once before. They'd assumed humanity would break under pressure, that fear would make them compliant. They'd been wrong. A chime sounded, signaling the end of the session. The delegates began to disperse, already discussing the logistics of the quarantine over glasses of distilled nebula, gas, and live grubs. Kane turned away from the spectacle, his boots clicking against the polished floor as he headed for the exit. "Captain." The voice stopped him. Vexis stood at the edge of the observation deck, having ascended the ramp without a sound. Up close, the Vorac Emperor smelled of ozone and something metallic. Blood. Maybe. His faceted eyes gleamed with cold amusement. "You have something to say?" Vexis asked, tilting his head in a gesture that was almost playful. Kane met his gaze. "Just thinking," he said, his voice calm, "about how history repeats itself." Vexis chuckled, a sound like grinding stone. "Ah, yes, your famous human resilience." He leaned closer, his breath hot against Kane's face. "Tell me, Captain, Do you really believe your pitiful fleet can stop what comes next? Kane didn't blink. We won't need the fleet. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in Vexis's eyes, doubt perhaps, or the first faint stirrings of unease. Then it was gone, buried under layers of arrogance. Brave words, the Emperor murmured. I look forward to breaking them from your bones. He turned and strode away, his retinue falling into step behind him. The chamber doors hissed shut, leaving Kane alone in the dim light. Outside the observation window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, hidden in the dark, the hunters were waiting, and they were hungry. The Galactic Concorde's orbital station hung like a jeweled crown against the blackness of space, its crystalline spires catching the light of 3 suns. Commander Lisa Hayes adjusted the collar of her dress uniform as the maglev pod hissed to a stop. The silver stripes on her sleeve, marking her as Earth's last remaining senior envoy, felt heavier today. The chamber doors slid open to silence, not the respectful quiet of deliberation, but the thick, smothering hush of a funeral. The circular amphitheater, designed to accommodate hundreds of species, stood half empty. Pods that once held allies now gaped like missing teeth. A Zephyrian delegate uncoiled from its floating perch as Hayes approached the central platform. Its iridescent scales rippled in patterns that would have signaled deference a week ago. Now they flashed only cold amusement. Commander Hayes, it hissed, the translator implant in Hayes' ear rendering the words with perfect, venomous clarity. How brave of you to come alone. Hayes kept her spine straight. Where is the Tarkalan delegation? Recalled. The Zephyrian's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. As were the Myrathi, the Phaedrix. I see the list for myself. Hayes' eyes scanned the vacant pods. The Tarkalans had sworn blood, oaths. The Myrathi owed Earth for the Battle of Cygnus. All gone. A Varaxian admiral clattered forward on jointed legs, its carapace polished to a mirror sheen. Your species always lacked perspective, it rasped. Did you truly believe brittle bones and soft flesh could stand against the Dominion? Hayes' fingers twitched toward the sidearm she wasn't allowed to carry here. We held the line at Tau Ceti, and died gloriously. The Varaxian's mandibles spread in what its species considered a smile, a fitting epitaph. A hologram flickered to life above the central dais, Emperor Vexis' scaled visage, 20 feet tall. The image showed human cities burning, Dominion walkers crushing resistance beneath diamond, clawed feet. The accompanying text scrolled in 100 languages, quarantine protocol enacted. Your High Council has reviewed the Dominion's terms. The Zephyrian extended a clawed hand. A single data crystal rested on its palm, glowing faintly blue. Surrender your remaining systems, submit to genetic cataloging. In return, your species will be permitted to exist as a living museum. Hayes stared at the crystal. She thought of the last transmission from Mars, the static, choked screams as the orbital defenses failed. The way Lieutenant Chen had kept firing until his fighter's oxygen ran out. The chamber's acoustics carried the crunch perfectly as her boot came down. The Zephyrian recoiled, scales flashing alarm. Read, "You, tell Vexis something for me." Hayes ground the crystal into glittering dust. Humanity doesn't do museums. The Varaxian lunged, but a pair of Concorde peacekeepers intercepted it with humming staves. This session is concluded, droned a mechanical voice from the ceiling. Hayes turned her back on the hissing delegates. The maglev pod's doors sealed behind her with a final hiss. Alone at last, she allowed herself 3 seconds to press shaking hands against the cool metal wall. Then she tapped her comm. Hayes to Holt. They're all gone. A crackle Admiral Holt's voice, tight with fury. Understood. Proceed to extraction point Sierra. Outside the viewport, the first Dominion scout ships appeared, dark specks against the stars moving fast. Hayes watched them come. Let them see her face. The pod accelerated toward the waiting human gunship, leaving the glittering station behind. Let the galaxy think humanity ran. For now, the Oort cloud hung silent and dark, a graveyard of ice and forgotten rocks at the edge of the solar system. No patrols ventured this far. No Dominion scouts bothered to scan the void here. To the Vorac, it was empty space. Just another dead zone in a galaxy they owned. That was their first mistake. Shadows moved where there should have been none. Shapes darker than the black between stars slid through the drifting ice, their hulls swallowing light, their engines colder than the vacuum itself. The UESN Revenant led the formation, its angular frame bristling with weapons that had never been logged in any Galactic Concord database. Behind it, the UESN Wraith and UESN Specter followed, their profiles jagged and predatory. These were not warships built for glory or parades. They were built for one purpose. Admiral Rachel Holt stood on the Revenant's bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. The dim lighting cast sharp lines across her face, highlighting the scars earned in battles the Dominion didn't even know had happened. The crew around her worked in silence, their movements precise, their voices low. No unnecessary chatter, no wasted motion. "Status," Holt said, her voice calm. "All systems green," replied Commander Vargas, his fingers dancing across a holographic display. Cloak holding at Fey weapons charged, Stalker protocols engaged. Holt allowed herself a small, grim smile. Project Stalker had been Earth's best, kept secret for 30 years. While the Galactic Concord dismissed human fleets as outdated, while the Dominion laughed at their primitive tactics, humanity had been building something else entirely. Not a navy, not an armada, a pack of hunters. "Open the channel," Holt ordered. The main screen flickered to life, splitting into multiple feeds. Faces appeared. Captains of the other ghost ships, their expressions as hard as the void outside. "Dominion forces have entered the Proxima system," Holt said. "They're burning colonies, executing civilians. They think we're hiding. They think we're broken." A low growl rippled through the bridge crew. "Time to remind them," Holt continued. "What happens when you corner a predator?" The captains nodded. No cheers, no grand speeches, just the quiet certainty of wolves about to strike. On the Wraith, Lieutenant Commander Kara Nilsson checked her tactical display. "We're in position, their convoys moving right into the kill zone." "Hold until my mark," Holt said. Silence stretched. The Dominion ships drifted closer, their shields down, their sensors blind to the shadows tracking them. A Vorac destroyer led the pack, its hull scarred from countless conquests. Its crew lounged at their stations, complacent, unprepared. Holt's fingers tightened. Now, space erupted. Torpedoes streaked out of nowhere, their signatures masked until the instant they struck. The lead destroyer's shields flared, then collapsed as the warheads detonated inside its hull. Plasma fires ripped through its decks, venting atmosphere and bodies into the void. The Revenant decloaked directly above a Vorac cruiser, its railguns humming to life. The first shot punched through the cruiser's bridge, turning command staff into vapor. The second shattered its reactor. On the Specter, Gunnery Chief Rios watched his targeting screen with cold satisfaction. Another one down. Panic erupted across the Dominion fleet. Frantic transmissions blared over open channels. Ambush were under. The signal cut off as the Wraith silenced another ship. A surviving Vorac captain screamed into the comms, his voice raw with terror. "Where are they? Who are they?" Holt leaned forward, her eyes locked on the chaos unfolding. "Tell them, Commander." Vargas opened a fleet-wide broadcast. A single phrase echoed across every Dominion frequency, crisp and clear. "United Earthstalker Fleet, you are being hunted." Then the channel cut, the shadows moved again. The Vorac never saw the killing blow coming. The void near Proxima Centauri was supposed to be safe. The Zenthari Dominion had declared it so. 3 Vorac dreadnoughts drifted alongside a convoy of bulbous supply haulers, their energy signatures lazy and unguarded. The escort's weapons were powered down, their crews lounging in the artificial gravity of victory. They had crushed human colonies, burned cities. and now they moved through space like it was their birthright. On the bridge of the UESN Revenant, Lieutenant Jake Morrison adjusted the scope of his targeting array. The holographic display flickered as it locked onto the lead dreadnought's bridge. His fingers hovered over the firing controls. No orders came through the comms. No final confirmation. That was the point. "Steady," murmured Commander Lyra Vasquez beside him. Her voice was calm, almost bored. "Let them get comfortable." The Vorac ships were massive, their hulls layered with armor meant to withstand direct hits from plasma cannons. But the Revenant wasn't here to trade blows. It was here to kill. "All torpedoes armed," whispered Ensign Rook from the weapons station. His hands didn't shake. None of theirs did. Morrison exhaled. Fire. The Revenant didn't shudder. It didn't announce its presence with roaring engines or blazing thrusters. The torpedoes slid from their tubes in perfect silence, their dark hulls swallowing light. No alarms sounded on the Vorac ships, no warnings. The first torpedo struck the lead dreadnought's engine array. The explosion was a brief, soundless bloom of white fire. The second and third hit the bridge and weapons core before the Vorac crew even knew they were under attack. Morrison watched through his scope as the dreadnought's command deck shattered. Bodies spun into the vacuum, their chitinous armor useless against the sudden, brutal violence. "Escorts are scrambling," Vasquez noted. "Too late." The Revenant decloaked just long enough for its railguns to cycle. The magnetic coils hummed, a low, hungry sound. Then thunder. A single tungsten round punched through the nearest escort's shields, like they weren't even there. The ship crumpled, its spine broken. The second escort managed to fire a wild volley of plasma before the Revenant's second shot tore its reactor apart. The remaining supply haulers tried to run. They didn't get far. "Clean up," Vasquez ordered. The Revenant's point defense lasers flickered out, precise as scalpels. One by one, the haulers' engines died. Their cargo, weapons, food, slaves would never reach Dominion lines. Morrison leaned back in his chair. "They didn't even see us," Vasquez smirked. "They never do." On the wreckage-strewn comm channels, a Vorac captain's voice crackled through the static. He was screaming. "Where are they? Who are they?" No one answered. The Revenant slid back into the dark, its hull cooling, its crew already preparing for the next hunt. Somewhere in the black, the UESN Wraith and UESN Specter were doing the same. The Dominion had thought humanity would fight on open ground. They had thought human ships would meet them in glorious suicidal charges. They were wrong. Humanity didn't fight fair. Humanity didn't fight at all. It hunted. The Worldbreaker's planet, killer cannon hummed to life, its massive coils glowing crimson as it charged. Emperor Vexis watched from his throne, mandibles twitching in anticipation. The human colony below, New Geneva, was a sprawling city of glass and steel, its lights twinkling like defiance. "Fire," Vexis commanded. The beam lanced downward, a spear of annihilation meant to crack continents. The Vorac bridge crew leaned forward, their compound eyes reflecting the expected fireball. It never came. The beam struck and splashed against an invisible barrier, rippling outward in concentric rings of dissipated energy. New Geneva stood untouched. Silence gripped the Worldbreaker's bridge. Vex's claws dug into his throne's armrests. "Explain this," he hissed. A tactical officer's Keaton paled. "Energy shield, Majesty. Unknown configuration. It matches our harmonic frequencies." "Impossible." On the USN Vanguard, Admiral Holt watched the feed with a cold smile. Beside her, Lieutenant Commander Chen adjusted his glasses. "Shield held at Fey. They really thought we wouldn't crack their toys." Holt tapped her console. A fleet, wide channel opened. "All units, this is Holt. They've shown their hand, now we show ours." Across the system, human ships decloaked. Not just the stealth fleet, but the real armada, dreadnoughts with reverse, engineered Vorac plating, railgun platforms built from scavenged Dominion tech. The Revenant was the first to strike. Its railguns punched through a Vorac cruiser's shields like they weren't there. The cruiser detonated, its wreckage spinning into the void. Vexis holographic displays flickered with damage reports. Where did they get these weapons? A human voice crackled over the comms. Holtz, calm and lethal. You left scraps after every raid. We studied. We improved. The Worldbreaker's tactical officer suddenly stiffened. Majesty. Incoming projectile. It's... The missile hit, not a nuke. Not plasma. A kinetic rod moving at Facey. It sheared through the Worldbreaker's dorsal armor. Alarms wailed. Vexis staggered as the deck tilted. Return fire, all batteries. But the human ships were already moving, their formations shifting with eerie precision. The Wraith slid between two Vorac destroyers, its point defense guns shredding their engines. On New Geneva's surface, civilians watched the sky light up with explosions. A child tugged her mother's sleeve. Are we losing? The mother grinned. No, sweetheart, they are. Back aboard the Vanguard, Kane monitored the battle. His fingers danced over tactical displays. Alt, their flanks collapsing. They're pulling ships to protect the Worldbreaker. Holt nodded. Then let's remind them who they're dealing with. She opened a channel to the stealth fleet. Morrison, you're cleared for Phase 2. Near the battle's edge, the Specter powered up its experimental drive. Lieutenant Jake Morrison exhaled, his targeting HUD locking onto the Worldbreaker's cannon. Fire. The shot wasn't explosive. It was a nanite payload. The projectile buried itself in the cannon's housing and began to eat. Vexis screens flashed red as the weapon's diagnostics spiraled into chaos. What is happening? A human engineer's voice, smug, answered over an open frequency. You ever hear of grey goo, Your Majesty? The cannon imploded, its housing dissolving into metallic sludge. Holt's face appeared on every Vorac screen. You brought war. We brought vengeance. The Worldbreaker's comms officer recoiled. Majesty, their fleet. They're laughing at us. And they were. Human crews, watching the Vorac flagship flounder, exchanged grins. Some clinked coffee mugs. Vexis roared. Full retreat. Regroup. At another impact. The Vanguard had fired. The Worldbreaker's shields failed. Holt leaned forward. Now, Captain Kane. The Vanguard's engines flared. It rammed the Worldbreaker head. On metal screamed. Bulkheads collapsed, and humanity's hunters boarded their prey. The wreckage of the Vorac's pride drifted in a slow, silent spin. Its once gleaming hull, now a mangled carcass of twisted metal and frozen atmosphere. The UESN Wraith slid through the debris field like a shadow through smoke, its blackened hull absorbing the dim starlight rather than reflecting it. Inside the ship's dimly lit bridge, the crew moved with quiet efficiency, their voices low but steady. Lieutenant Sarah Chen leaned back in her chair, sipping from a steaming mug of coffee. The scent of it, real Earth coffee smuggled aboard despite regulations, filled the command deck. Around her, the crew monitored their stations, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. Another one down, murmured Ensign Reavers, his fingers dancing across his console. That makes 12 dreadnoughts in this sector alone. Chen smirked. And they still haven't figured out how we're doing it. On the main screen, the wreckage of the Vorac's pride tumbled past, its bridge section torn open like a gutted fish. The Dominion had built their ships for intimidation, for overwhelming firepower. They hadn't built them for this, for an enemy that refused to fight on their terms. A chime sounded from the comms station. Incoming transmission, said Lieutenant Park. Encrypted burst from the Revenant. Chen set her coffee down. Put it through. Admiral Holt's face appeared on the screen, her expression calm, but her eyes sharp. Status, clean sweep, Chen reported. No survivors, no distress calls got out. Holt nodded. Good. The Dominion scrambling their psychic cast. They're trying to break into our networks, our minds. Stand ready. Chen exchanged a glance with Park. The Dominion's telepaths were feared across the galaxy. They could shatter morale with a thought, turn allies against each other with whispers. But humans weren't like the other species. Let them try, Chen said softly. Aboard the Dominion's Will, the flagship of the Vorac psychic fleet, High Telepath Zerethis clenched his clawed hands. His cranial tendrils pulsed with energy as he reached out, searching for the minds of the human hunters. He found them and recoiled. His secondary eyes snapped open, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The other telepaths around him staggered, some collapsing to their knees. "What is it?" demanded Captain Vorsk, his mandibles clicking in agitation. Zerethis shuddered. "Their minds. They are not like the others, not like anything." Vorsk snarled. "Break them." Zerethis tried again. He pushed into the human consciousness and met not fear, not hesitation, but a cold, focused hunger. Images flashed through his mind. A sniper's crosshair settling between a Vorac's eyes, the hum of a railgun charging, a whispered countdown before a torpedo strike, and beneath it all, a quiet, terrifying certainty. Zerethis wrenched himself free, his tendrils smoking. They do not fear us," he gasped. "They welcome this." Vorsk's claws twitched. "What? They enjoy the hunt," Zerethis whispered. Back on the Wraith, Chen felt the pressure in her skull ease. She exhaled, rolling her shoulders. "They're gone." Park rubbed his temples. "That was weird. Like someone poking around in my brain with a stick." Chen picked up her coffee again, taking a slow sip. They were looking for fear, for doubt. And, she smiled, they didn't find any. The crew exchanged glances, then went back to their stations. The Wraith's engines hummed as it turned, sliding back into the void. Somewhere out there, the Dominion was still searching for them. Let them search. The hunters weren't done yet. The bridge of the Worldbreaker shook as another explosion rocked its starboard side. Emperor Vexis gripped his command throne, his chitinous plates rattling with the impact. The once proud Vorac flagship was bleeding atmosphere from a dozen breaches. Its mighty planet, killer cannon now a twisted ruin of molten metal. "Where are my reinforcements?" Vexis roared, his mandibles clicking in fury. A trembling tactical officer turned, his four eyes wide with fear. "None respond, Majesty. The human fleet, they've destroyed everything." Vexis snarled, his claws digging into the armrests. This was impossible. The Dominion had never lost a war. Never. Then the alarms screamed. "Breach, Deck 7. The USN Vanguard had rammed them, not with missiles, not with torpedoes, with its entire 3-kilometer-long hull, shearing through the Worldbreaker's armored plating like a knife through flesh. Captain Kane ejected his crash harness the moment the Vanguard came to a stop, his boots hitting the deck with a thud. Around him, the bridge crew was already moving, damage reports flashing across screens. "Seal the bulkheads behind us," Kane ordered, grabbing his plasma cutter. "We're boarding." His Marines fell in behind him without a word, their armor blackened from battle, their rifles humming with charge. They moved through the Vanguard's shattered bow, stepping over twisted metal and sparking conduits, and into the belly of the beast. The Worldbreaker was dark, its crimson emergency lights casting long shadows. The air stank of ozone and Vorac blood. Kane's helmet display painted the way forward, highlighting heat signatures deeper in the ship. "Contact," Sergeant Reyes whispered, her rifle snapping up. A squad of Vorac warriors rounded the corner, their plasma rifles spitting green fire. Kane ducked behind a bulkhead, felt the heat of a near-miss scorch past his cheek. Flash out. The grenade bounced once before detonating, blinding the Vorac with searing light. Kane and his Marines were moving before the echoes faded, their rifles barking in controlled bursts. The Vorac fell, their chitin cracking under armor, piercing rounds. No time to stop, no time to think. They pushed deeper, clearing corridor after corridor, their boots splashing through alien blood. The Worldbreaker was dying around them, its systems failing, its crew panicking. Then, the throne room doors, massive, ornate, etched with the sigils of 100 conquered worlds. Kane didn't hesitate. He slapped a breaching charge on the hinges and stepped back. Fire in the hole. The explosion tore the doors from their frames. Smoke billowed into the chamber beyond, revealing Emperor Vexis standing atop his dais, his personal guard arrayed around him. "You," Vexis hissed, his voice dripping with venom. "You dare set foot on my ship?" Kane stepped through the wreckage, his plasma cutter humming in his grip. "This isn't your ship anymore." The Vorac guards lunged. The Marines opened fire. The throne room became a storm of gunfire and screams, plasma bolts crisscrossing the air, blades clashing against armor. Reyes went down, a Vorac spear through her shoulder, but she yanked it free and kept fighting. Another Marine, Corporal Diaz, took a plasma burn to the chest and still managed to put 3 rounds into the Vorac who'd shot him. Kane moved like a shadow, his cutter slicing through chitin and muscle. He didn't stop, didn't slow, until only Vexis remained. The Emperor staggered back, his once gleaming armor now scorched and broken, his left arm hanging limp at his side. His remaining guard lay dead at his feet. "You are animals," Vexis spat, his voice trembling with rage and pain. "You fight without honor, without code." Kane didn't blink. He raised his cutter, its blue glow reflecting in Vexis' black eyes. "No," he said softly. "We're hunters." The shot echoed through the silent throne room. Vexis collapsed, his body hitting the deck with a final, hollow thud. Kane exhaled, his shoulders sagging for the first time in hours. Around him, his Marines checked their wounds, reloaded their weapons. Reyes limped to his side, her face streaked with blood. "Signal the fleet," Kane said, his voice rough. "It's done." A moment later, Admiral Holt's voice crackled over the comm. "Vanguard, this is Revenant. Dominion fleet is in full retreat. Repeat, full retreat." A cheer went up from the Marines, but Kane just stared at the dead Emperor at his feet. Then the comm crackled again. "Captain Kane," Holt said, her tone shifting. "We're receiving a priority hail from the Galactic Concord. They're requesting an audience." Kane almost laughed. He looked at Reyes, at Diaz, at the rest of his battered, bloodied team. Tell them well. Think about it. Outside the shattered viewports of the Worldbreaker, the stars burned cold and silent. The Dominion's reign was over, and humanity's had just begun.